I'm here to announce the disappearance of our writer, Roberto Segrov, who at one time lived in Bogota. He's one of our Colombian authors. I don't want to waste your time with emotional bullshit, but I will tell you that it hasn't been easy, and I will tell you that I don't want one more person to come over my shoulder like a fucking psychopathic homunculus and tell me, whisper in my ear, it's not your responsibility, you're a publisher. That is a completely dehumanized and philosophically bereft view of the relationship between a writer and a publisher, of literature itself. Thanks. So, this is what I tell you. This is what I tell everybody, which is difficult because it's very difficult for you to even remember what I'm saying. Point is this. It's a question and it's a point. If you have one human being, and that human being mitotes, how many doppelgangers exist? If you have a man or a woman or a dog looking at a mirror, and at some point, the human, the man, the dog, the woman in the mirror turns around as if in disgust, most likely in disgust, and walks away while you stand there like the vapid. I don't know disrespect to our readers, like the vapid reader that you are. Sorry, that was in the script in my mind. So the thing is, how many human beings exist now? We don't know. What does this have to do with Roberto Segrov? He was writing a short story. He had finished a short story. He sent us the first 3 pages. I said, great, keep going. He said, but I'm done. And then he said, I'll send it to you tomorrow morning. It never came. He disappeared. We have 3 pages of a short story about a man in Bogota who wakes up in the middle of the night knowing that he went somewhere else, and that place becomes Isola, this town where his publisher lives halfway across the world. And that character in that story starts writing on the bedroom wall, drawing a map of Isola that, as far as we know so far, seems to comport quite well with the actual Isola, but of course we don't know because it's words on a paper, and there's much in 3 compact pages that says that is Isola. He certainly thinks it is, the character. I don't know what Segrov thought. Maybe he went insane and said, where am I? I'm in Bogota? I need to get to Isola. Writers are not superhuman, but sometimes they do things that nobody else can do. Segrov may be one of those writers, and he may have dealt with this problem, the conundrum of which I've introduced with 2 examples. He may have dealt with that better than any writer ever has, and the inevitable result of that might be his disappearance. I don't know, but if he has that, okay, I'm going to go weep for a while, but now, before I leave, I'm going to say we will do everything that we can to find him.
Portrait of a drowning man. But it was not entirely clear that the city was being built in the progression of the nights, that, on each occasion, New neighborhoods were being suggested and expressed. With every entry into my dream, it could be that I started on a different street or departed from the same street for a series of nights. And the drift was laying out the new design of streets. But those narrow streets that were emerging with their alleys, passages, and buildings and their cobblestone ground were already there. Only they didn't show themselves to me until I began to walk. And the city was mine, entirely mine, always at night, in my dream. I began then to draw a map. The persistence of the visits to those spaces had endowed me with a clear and accurate topographical memory. Mornings found me exhausted, but the life of the dream visited its obsessions within me, sustaining me in a simulacrum of wakefulness throughout the day until I reached unexplored areas that abruptly suspended the reconstruction. Only then would I stop, step back, and contemplate the landscaping of the map that was taking over the wall of my room. At first, Milena was indifferent, as if these were a new vice in my extensive repertoire of addictions that soon burnt out, leaving me mumbling out the ashes of enthusiasm. After I completed the first month of work, she walked into the room, arms crossed over her chest, and I sensed her intrigue. One day at breakfast, she remarked in my silence that it was a coastal city. I squinted at her, realizing that indeed I had always smelled the sea, and from some manner of fog emerged a shipyard I couldn't locate immediately, perhaps because of her suggested concern, as if the fact that it was a coastal city were an omen. One night, I awoke in the dream, amid a small square, barely a patch of light in the city's night, which seemed to gaze down at me in terror. I turned around and noticed the campanile looming over me. I intended to find the entrance to the church to get up for a better view from above, but the need for ascent seemed to shake me, as it didn't entirely obey that true purpose. My dream self post hoc admonished for the hypocrisy of his motivations. I only wanted to enter and climb to avoid contemplating the structure from its base. I remembered the linguist asserting, regarding an ancient poem, that many stayed near the monument's foundations, hiding in its shadow instead of ascending to gaze from the heights of meaning. Then, a sea breeze seemed to outline the scene. Platforms, trees, benches emerged here and there. A narrow street deepened into space, and tall, weathered walls cut through the wind. I headed downhill, my wise feet guiding me confidently. I passed gateways with thick wooden doors that knew human history by heart and guarded it with a melancholic and resigned air. At the end of the alley, a solid row of walls, yellowish, governed by a fine freckled and greenish mold, loomed. I could turn left and climb a cobbled alley towards another square with a church that I now accurately guessed was a university, or I could go right, where a broad esplanade opened. I went in that direction, and there, at the end, asleep but attentive, was the shipyard. The boats swayed like huge pelicans with folded wings and beaks buried in the black, lifeless waters. The salty taste rendered me awake again, still in my bed. My feet throbbed and my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. It was still dark, but I couldn't let the sensation escape. I got up smoothly so as not to disturb Milena. In the kitchen, I found a candle holder she had inherited, adorned a shelf. I lit the stove and brought the candles petrified and close, like a remnant of the past invading that night, projecting its light into this text. I returned, and with its meager luminescence, I began desperately tracing those spaces on the wall. Dawn found me reproducing the shipyard. At one point during my work, I felt Milena's gaze. She observed me as if blind, absorbed in her thoughts. There was no reproach, if perhaps disbelief. I gestured for her to see that she hadn't been wrong, that indeed there was a coast. She sighed, but it left me unsettled, as if my actions were inappropriate.
It must be a coastal city.